So kind of what we want to do today is talk about what's new with those power products, and we've got some exciting new features that we're going to talk about today. Great, thanks. Isn't that switching now? It's not changing to the next screen, Wayne.
Oh, it's active. Make that the active.
Okay, there we go. So these are the three topics we're going to cover today. One is IntelliCENTER software version 6. Are you guys familiar with IntelliCENTER software? So IntelliCENTER software is basically with an intelligent motor control center. It's kind of an HMI for the motor control center. So you can view everything that's going on within the MCC. So you can look at status information on the starter. If you've got VFDs in the MCC, you can monitor everything that's going on from a remote location. So you don't have to go and stand in front of the MCC to see what's going on. So we're going to get into some detailed conversation on that and what's new with that software. And the second thing is the PowerFlex 755 new release. We've got a new release coming out in November for the 755 product, and then also the PowerFlex 7000 with ArcShield. So we're going to cover that as well. So again, with IntelliCENTER software, again, it's a virtual representation of your MCC. So if you order an intelligent motor control center, the factory is going to create a data disk for that MCC. So that elevation of the MCC, specific to your order, you're going to have access to it from a remote location. So you install the software on your laptop, or if you have an HMI, you can drop the configuration right into an existing HMI so that you can monitor what's going on within that MCC. And again, it's factory configured. It's very simple to use. So you can monitor, if you've got a pump application, you want to go in and look at how many amps are being pulled by the motor. You can go in and monitor that. A long time ago, if you didn't have IntelliCENTER, if you need to check motor amps, you probably have to go open the door, put a clamp on the wires, kind of see what's going on, right? So you don't have to do any of that anymore. You can monitor all this information from the software package. There's also real-time energy consumption. There's energy metrics is what it's called. So you can monitor your energy usage, and you can log this data, right? And you can go back and look at it, kind of see how much energy is being used. And then all the documentation is all a part of this software package. All your wiring schematics, all your manuals, and it's all for the devices that you have in that motor control center. Any questions about that? So if you guys have questions, just please raise your hand, ask me. It's kind of informal. So this is what the monitor view looks like. So if you were to drill down on a bucket in the MCC, this is what you're going to get. So there's some meters where you can monitor the voltage or the current. You can set up some real-time trends so you can see what's actually happening. There's parameters that you can modify. If you've got an overload situation and overload trips, you can reset it from the software. And you can do some predictive maintenance, right? So you can set alarms based on thresholds. So you can have the system email you or call your cell phone if you've got an alarm situation where you can go in, kind of check things out before you experience some downtime. And again, with IntelliCENTER Energy, this is another software package that you can use to collect that energy consumption data. Again, you can go back in time, you can log this information, and you can go back in time and look at it and try to do some troubleshooting and look at ways that you can reduce your energy cost. Also with the IntelliCENTER Integration Assistant. What that is if you've got a control logics processor that you're using, all this data that's in this motor control center, you can import all that data into your control logic system. So what that does is all the tags for all these devices, the data disk, you can import it in, and then the I/O tree and the control logics, it's going to create all that tag information so you have access to all that information within your processor. Okay? So if you want to take some actions on some of that data, you don't have to go in and set up all those tags. You can just import the information right into your control logics. So it'll save you a lot of time when it comes to commissioning, troubleshooting, and then it will minimize mistakes as well, right? So if you don't have to go in and manually type in all those tags, if it's going to be automatically done for you, you're going to minimize, fat fingering something, right?
What
Yes.
version of Studio is minimum?
Studio 5000, I believe it's version 24, is it, Dean?
I'm not sure what the version might be 21. The first version. Yeah.
I think we're up to,
It's been around for a while, I thought.
right. Yeah, so for Premiere integration, I believe it is version 21 for Studio 5000. Was there another question somewhere? No? Yes.
So through this IntelliCENTER, is the motor overload adjustable?
Yeah, you can configure the settings through the software for the E300s.
Can you get like total load on the MCC? You get trending information over time?
On the entire MCC, yeah, I think it's going to be on the individual buckets. Pardon?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know if you can do it. So I know if you have a power monitor set up on the MCC, you can use a power monitor to look at the entire MCC. But I think for the IntelliCENTER software, using the, you're going to be looking at the individual devices that are within the MCC. But with power monitor, you can certainly do that. And then the power monitor will, trend that data as well, so you can go in and pull it out and look at it. If you have a fault condition or something like that, you can look at the data prior to the fault as well as shortly after the fault. Any more questions? So what's new with version 6? So one, with IntelliCENTER software, we've got Stratix switches throughout the MCC to get all the devices on the Ethernet network, right? And initially, when we first launched IntelliCENTER, what we would do is we would put a Stratix switch in every vertical section, right? So if you had 10 sections, you end up with 10 Stratix switches, which is a lot of switches, right? And it's overkill. So we've optimized that. So now what we can do is we'll put a Stratix switch in a bucket, and we can have up to 30 ports. So you can have one switch for 8 or 9 different sections, right? So the new thing here is that now that Stratix switch shows up in this elevation, whether it's in the horizontal wireway or whether it's in one of the units, okay? And there's also a monitor view now for the Stratix switch. Now you can't configure the switch through the monitor view, but you can monitor status information within the Stratix 5700 switch. You can also monitor the port configuration. So you can do some troubleshooting. If you've got some communication issues, you can do some troubleshooting using this monitor view in the IntelliCENTER software. And again, you can't configure it, but you can definitely monitor it. If you need to configure it, you're going to have to use the web page, or with Studio 5000, you can go in and set up the Stratix switch that way as well. Any questions about that? And then with the E300, you guys all familiar with the E300 overload relay?
Yeah, actually, there's a question online. Are there any retrofit options for NCCs to use IntelliCENTER, or is this on something that works with the newest NCC?
you can retrofit. Well, let me ask you this: with just the software, or is this with a retrofit for the IntelliCENTER Motor Control Center itself? Because if you have the Ethernet switches in the MCC and you don't have the IntelliCENTER software, you can go back at a later date and upgrade with the software. You can get the data disks created. You can install the software so that you can go in and start monitoring the devices. As far as retrofitting the MCC with Ethernet when you don't have any of the switches, I'm not sure about that. Would that be a...
It's an engineering project, and it can be done, but it's an engineering project. You have to specify all the devices that you're going to
Right.
put in, and it can be done. Typically, it's a new project, or it's an add-on to the existing IntelliCENTER.
Right. So with the E300, the new thing that we've added, and with E300 it comes standard with, I think there's 6 digital inputs, there's a couple outputs, but there's also some expansion I/O modules that you can add to the E300. So if you want to bring in some discrete inputs to that device, you can add expansion modules. Now we have those available as a monitor to view within IntelliCENTER software. So you can, if you've got 2 or 3 modules, you select the module you want to look at, then you get status on those inputs on those specific modules. Okay, so that's something new that's been added to the IntelliCENTER software. Right, Bill's not in here. And then again, in terms of the documentation, so all the devices that are in your MCC, all the documentation associated with those devices are going to be a part of this software package. So all the wiring schematics, all the manuals. So if you've got E300s, if you've got drives, if you've got soft starts, all the documentation is going to be a part of this package. So you don't have to go looking for information. It's right at your fingertips within the software package. Right, so you click on the device, you go to the documentation, and then you pull up whether it's drawings or manuals or spare parts. All that information resides right in the software. Okay? Any questions about IntelliCENTER software, any of these new features that are now available in version 6? Nope. Okay, we'll move on to the next topic. Nothing on the chat line? So PowerFlex 750 series products. So we've got the PowerFlex 753, the 755, and we've got a new product coming out called the 755T. So we're going to step back a little bit. So with the 750 series, the 753 and the 755 are the 2 drives that we offer today. All right, and the 753 goes up to 350 horsepower. That is a wall mount drive. Okay, frames 2 through 7. So when you go above 350 horsepower, it becomes a floor mount drive. So the 753 doesn't go any higher than 350. Above that is the 755, right? And we can go all the way up to 2,000 horsepower with the current offering today. Now the 53 is kind of a general purpose drive, right? So if you got fans or pumps, that's probably the drive you'd want to use, for standalone applications. So when you get into high performance system level drives, that's when you want to use the 755. There's more algorithms, there's different functions that the 755 has that the 53 does not. Okay, so that's our high performance premier integration type of drive. So if you look at those drives, the 753 has 3 option slots where you can put in I/O modules, communication modules, encoders. The 755 has 5 option slots, all right? But the modules are all interchangeable, whether it's on a 10 horsepower drive or 1,000 horsepower drive. You can use the same I/O modules in all the drives. Again, just communications modules, I/O, feedback, safety modules, standard across the board with all these drives. I'm going to skip through some of these slides here. Just a host of communication options, right? We can do Ethernet, Profibus, Modbus, BACnet, just whatever your requirements are, we can pretty much meet them all. So this is the floor mount 755, right? It's a roll-in feature into the enclosure. So that would be your frame. Start with the frame 8, and then with the frame 9, we would parallel 2 frame 8s, and with the frame 10, we would have 3 frame 8s in parallel to get up to the 2,000 horsepower. Another feature on the 755, the floor mount drive, is all your wiring connections are in the back of the enclosure, right? So you input power and your load cables are connected in the back. So if you had to take that drive out, you don't have to undo all those connections, right? And that drive is a modular drive. So you've got control pods, you've got your converter section, your inverter section, you got a cap bank. So if you have to replace something, you don't have to roll out the entire cart. You can take out the module that you need to have replaced, and just makes it easier to troubleshoot that way. So again, that would be your frames 8, 9, and 10 with the 755. So now to the new product that's coming out in November, the 755T. So again, this is an extension of the 750 product, okay? It's being repackaged. There's some new features that are going to be available. And it's going to extend up to 3,000 horsepower. And again, it's built on the capabilities of the PowerFlex 755. So the options that I talked about, the I/O modules, the COM modules, all those same modules are going to be used on this new 755T product. So there's 3 flavors of the 755T. The first is the 755TL, which is low harmonic. So this drive is going to meet IEEE 519. So if you've got an application where that's a requirement, you don't have to. In the past, like with the 755, if you had that requirement, you'd have to put in the 18 pulse transformer or something like that. But with this drive, it's got an active front end, and it's got a filter already built into it. So it's going to meet IEEE 519. The second option is the TR, 755TR. That's a regenerative drive. Okay, it still has the low harmonics, but it's a regenerative drive that goes up to 3,000 horsepower. The low harmonic drive, the TL, only goes up to 1,800. The TR goes up to 3,000. And then we have the TM, which is a modular drive system, where we take, we have an active front end, we have a bus supply, we create a common DC bus, and depending on the requirements of the application, you can start hanging inverters off of that DC bus to run a system. So for example, on a paper machine where you've got a wet end section where you might have 5 or 6 drives you need to run in a group, you can hang all those inverters off that one common DC bus. So again, different applications for the low harmonics. I mean, for water, wastewater type applications, that's always an issue, being able to meet IEEE 519, fans and pumps. For the regenerative drive, lifts, cranes, pump jacks, and then the TM drive, the system level drive, or the common bus drive, paper machines, drill rigs, rolling mills, metal forming. I mean, there's a host of applications we can now reach that we couldn't reach before with this new drive that's coming out. So again, kind of the same concept. Frame 8 at 480 volts, we can go up to 650 horsepower. frame 9 we can get up to 1100, and a frame 10 we can get up to 1800 with the TL drive. So again, we just parallel those power structures to get the increased horsepower. The 755 TR, again, we can go up to 3,000 horsepower, again, by paralleling the power structures. And then the TM, again, we go up to 3,000 horsepower on this first release. So again, these drives are coming out November. We're going to release them. I'll launch them at Automation Fair in Atlanta this year. Did not change. So again, it's an expansion of the 750 product, okay? Common technologies. It's going to use a lot of the same components, the I/O modules. All those modules are going to be the same. The option cards. And in terms of premier integration, if you run a control logic system, there's a lot of features and benefits that you get from the whole premier integration story. I mean, there's automatic device configuration. This is where if you have a drive that fails and you have to change it out, if it's tied to a control logics, the configuration for the drive is stored in the control logics, so you can have control logics automatically reconfigure that drive once you bring it online. So all those features and functions apply to this new 755T product. Any questions so far? Nothing on the webinar? You guys see, think you have any applications or see any benefits for this new product, this 755T?
Has to do with the heat output you use when you spec out a prefab building to facility. They're always asking what's the heat output. So is that something that you can quantify pretty exactly?
Yeah, we can definitely get that information from the factory on what the heat loss would be and what the AC requirements would be for building. Absolutely. Yep. So again, we'll have built-in dual Ethernet ports on these drives. Again, the whole premier integration story, working with control logics, and you can set the drives up in a ring, just extremely reliable, easy to start up. We've got startup wizards. We use Connected Components Workbench now, which is a free software package that you can download from the Rockwell website, and you can use that to commission the drives. I mean, obviously, if you've got a HIM module, you can use the HIM module to set the drives up, but we do have a newer software package that we use to configure these drives. So we kind of talked about that already. We'll get past that. And then the third topic that I wanted to go over today was the PowerFlex 7000 drive system with ArcShield technology. So I guess the first question is, why is arc resistant important? And the reason it's important is because each year there's more than 1,500 people that require treatment from severe ArcShield injuries or burns. There's an average of 3 workers electrocuted every week, and there's 5 to 10 arc flash explosions that occur in electrical equipment every day. So that's pretty serious, right? So arc-resistant equipment offers a level of safety to personnel. It decreases the safety costs by controlling the blast effects. And you can maximize the equipment longevity and return on investment through a strict installation process. So we have arc-resistant medium voltage MCCs, we have arc-resistant low voltage MCCs, and now we're offering an arc-resistant PowerFlex 7000 medium voltage VFD. So there's two ratings on this drive. There's a 50 kA rating. There's also a 40 kA rating. And in some later slides, I'll show you what the differences are between the two. But there's this is our active front-end direct-to-drive PowerFlex 7000. So we can do 2400 volts, 4160, or 6600. I'm sorry, not 6600, 2400 and 4160, up to 430 amps. It's fully integrated with the Centerline 2100 product, or the 1500 product, and it's based on decades of experience that we have with the medium voltage ArcShield motor control center. So these are the standards that we build this drive to: IEEE C37, the CSA C22, there's IEC 62271. We meet all those standards with this new drive. This drive has a Type 2 accessibility. We'll talk about that in a second, and what that means, what type of protection you get with that. And really it's designed to limit the fault energy and to redirect the fault energy away from personnel. So with Type 1 accessibility, so if you're standing in the front of an ArcShield rated gear, then you're protected only in the front of that equipment, right? That's Type 1 accessibility. So on the sides and in the rear, if you were standing in those areas and something happened, then you've got no protection in those areas on a Type 1 accessibility. Type 2 provides accessibility all around the equipment. So on the front, the sides, and the rear, you've got protection. And then there's Type 2B. What the B stands for is there's a low voltage section that's on the drive. If that door is open, you still have protection from an arc blast that might happen. So you've got total protection all around the equipment. That's what Type 2B accessibility means. The rest of the doors have to be closed, but that low voltage door can be open. So again, a little bit more on the standards. Again, we meet all these standards. We have documentation that we can provide if it's required, but that's the list of global standards that we're compliant with. So again, the idea is to create a safe work environment, right? So we can limit the fault energy duration using the current limiting power fuses. We can contain the fault by beefing up the structure to make sure no doors fly open in the event of a fault. And then we can also redirect it with the chimneys or the plenums that we use to direct the energy outside of the enclosure. So from an electrical standpoint, I mean, this is the schematic for the PowerFlex 7000. And then this is the ArcShield drive input starter. There's a couple different configurations that we can do, and we'll talk about those next. So you can have the input starter remote from the drive, or it can be integrated into the drive. Is there a question back there? So with the 50 kA rated drive, the incoming line, you have to have an incoming line unit, and it has to be 36 inches wide, and the drive input starter has to be 36 inches wide as well. And that will get you the 50 kA rating for standalone configuration. if you have an existing MCC lineup, you can also achieve the ArcShield rating with this configuration. So you need a 26-inch wide input starter to add to that lineup. So two options as far as getting that 50 kA rating, either standalone or remote. And then with the 40 kA rating, with the inputs, you don't need a input line unit, but you need an input starter. And it's got to be at least 26 inches wide for 400 amp or 36 inches wide for 600 amp in the standalone configuration. And then again with the MCC lineup, 26 inches wide for 400 amps and 36 inches wide for 600 amps in that MCC. So you just cable over to the drive and you still achieve the ArcShield rating. So if we look at the structural design, we've got some self-closing vents in front of the door. So in the event of a fault, those vents are going to close off, preventing any gases or any shrapnel, any type of debris from escaping the drive. We've reinforced the side sheets and the roof plates on the drive, and we've strengthened the cabinet doors. If you look at the extra bracing that we have on these doors now. And we've also modified the hinges. That will prevent the door from opening in the event of a fault. There's also a pressure relief vent on the top of the unit. This is the chimney design that also includes the self-closing vents. And then the plenum, which you can direct either out the side of the building. So if there's a fault, any gases will be expelled outside of the building. So this is, I'm going to run this really quick. It's just to kind of show you what the drive looks like from all angles here. Again, we will have an ArcShield drive at the Automation Fair this year in Atlanta. So one thing I want to point out is that if you go with an ArcShield rated drive, it does not increase the footprint of the drive. Okay. IEEE C37. If you look at delivery time, it's 12 to 18 weeks. Current limited fuses. Also, I want to point out and keeping your people safe. The cost for this additional feature is minimal. It adds about 5% to the list price. Okay, so we're not talking about a lot of cost here to go with this ArcShield PowerFlex 7000. It's just some system specifications. I'm not going to go through all of these, but again, the rated input voltage 2.4 kV up to 4160. We meet IEEE 519 with PowerFlex 7000. And I want to point out the cooling method. So this is air cooled only. Okay. PowerFlex 7000 is inherently regenerative. So there's also some huge significant energy savings with PowerFlex 7000. You can put energy back on the grid, and you can reduce the initial hardware cost in installation with elimination of a braking resistor. Any questions? You guys are kind of quiet. let's see, we'll skip on do that. So, in addition to, the ArcShield drive, we do offer a lot of other services. There's system short circuit studies, there's coordination studies. We do arc flash hazard risk analysis, field labeling, mitigation services, arc flash programs, training and maintenance agreements. And I've kind of gone through this fairly quickly, as hadn't been a lot of questions. So kind of open it up for anything you guys want to discuss, anything that we've talked about today.
And for the web audience, you can either raise your hand, type in a question. If you raise your hand on the web, I can unmute your line if you want to ask a question out loud, or feel free to chat or type in a question if you have one for Lance. And anything from the room as well.
What was the low end on the 755T? The low horsepower goes down to the brand name.
Yeah, well, on the initial launch, the low end is 250 horsepower. So we'll go 250 horsepower up to 3,000 on the first release of the product. On the second release, we're going to go all the way down to 50 horsepower and go up to 6,000 horsepower. As low voltage going up to 6,000 horsepower. That's right. Good question.
All right, I don't see anything from online, so if you want nothing else here, we can we'll end it early today. There's been several times when we've gone way over, so I'm sure nobody will complain about ending a little earlier than normal. So with that, Lance, we appreciate your time and
thanks for coming out today. Appreciate it.
All right, and we will see you guys on the next one. Thanks. Stay safe, everybody.